So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for sharing our spaces, how intergenerational spaces maximize infrastructure investments and benefit all generations. I'm Donna Butts, and I have the honor of serving as Generations United's Executive Director. I'm so glad that all of you are joining us today for this virtual briefing on intergenerational shared sites. Today's briefing is co-sponsored with our wonderful partner, the Eisner Foundation. Before I get started, I'm going to cover a few quick housekeeping items, those things that thrill all of us. First, as you can see, we're using Zoom webinar today. So you won't be able to see your fellow participants' faces, but we still encourage you to use the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen to connect with one another. You can help warm up the chat box now by sharing your name and where you're from. Slides and an abbreviated recording of this webinar will be available after the event. Everyone who attends today will receive an email with links to those, and they'll also be posted on the Generations United website. And lastly, I want to invite all of you to join us on social media today and use the hashtag IG Shared Sites 21. We have a tremendous lineup of speakers joining us to discuss intergenerational shared sites. These are sites that are intentionally designed to provide services and programs to multiple generations concurrently and foster meaningful cross-age relationships. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, shared sites have found ways to keep generations connected, even when it wasn't safe for them to be physically together. Shared sites proved that during good and tough times, they build and maintain strong connections between generations and add value to our communities and our country. This briefing today is timely as our cities, states, and country are working to build back better from the pandemic and considering the best approaches to investments in our nation's infrastructure. We must use an intergenerational lens that recognizes our young and our old thrive together. So now, without further ado, let's jump in and listen to our tremendous speakers. First, I want to introduce Joanne Thompson. She's the president and CEO of Buena Via in Surprise, Arizona. Buena Via is a terrific intergenerational campus that I remember visiting years ago. I was so impressed by the creative ways they found to eliminate obstacles that would have stopped others. Instead of giving up, which is always the easiest thing to do, they stayed with their vision and succeeded. I'm delighted Joanne is here to tell us more today. So Joanne, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Donna, and your whole team at Generations United for having me. I'm so excited to share our experiences that we've had over the years and to really answer any questions that anybody has about having a shared site, because it truly is so beneficial to each generation. So we have been an organization for 40 years now, which is very exciting. And how we got involved in intergenerational thoughts was we had a program in Peoria, Arizona at the Church of Cactus. And right next door to it was a charter school. And so the kids from the charter school would go visit the grandmas and grandpas at the program every day. And so we're like, this is amazing. So then fast forward to the early 2000s when we started planning for our main campus that we have. And so the architect just said, dream what you want. And our past president, Michelle Dionisio, said, I want an intergenerational program. So they went around the valley and all across the United States to just research the different intergenerational programs that we have. And so they wanted to reduce all the barriers that they could. So they just wanted to make it as easy as possible for the children to go in and visit our grandmas and grandpas. And so we have Lucy Ann's Place in Surprise, which is an adult day center, but we don't like the word adult day center, so we call it a life enrichment program because we really want to enrich their lives. That's right next door to Wurtzies, our preschool and childcare. So the children get to go and visit the grandmas and grandpas every day and do music with them and yoga and Tai Chi. They garden with them. They do arts and crafts and dance, and they just have a great time together. So I want to talk to you about some lessons learned that we have, because, we have two licensing bodies, right? We have our adult day health services, and then we have our childcare licensing. And it was a lot easier when we opened the program. I'm actually the person who opened our Lucy Ann's Place many years ago. ago. So that was very exciting for me. So I got to experience the licensing firsthand, and they were excited about the intergenerational concept because they could really see the benefits for the adults. Now on the childcare side, that's where we had to really jump through some hoops and cut through some red tape. They were really nervous about it because they weren't sure what was going to happen. They were worried about the children getting hurt and different things. And so we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? So it really took a lot of education on our part to really talk through the licensing staff that came through to really help them understand that staff from both the childcare facility and Lucy Ann's place were both going to be there. They've been trained on the intergenerational concept, and they really know what to do. And so that gave them a little bit more confidence. But in the licensing regulations, they weren't sure like how they can go outside of their licensed space. So what we had to do was work with the city. And so in our intergenerational room, that's actually called Suite 101. So it was a change of address that we had to do. So that way the kids were going on a field trip so they can go into our intergenerational room and interact with the grandmas and grandpas. So that's worked out just tremendously, and they have so much fun doing that. Now, another barrier that I want to talk to you guys about that you can really overcome is your staffing. Your staff have to believe in this concept also. You know, we've been open since 2009, and we've had a couple different directors, you know, on each side. And we find that the directors of the program really have to believe in this intergenerational concept for it to go through. Because so for our childcare, you know, the parents sign an authorization for the kids to go into to see the grandmas and grandpas in the intergenerational space. And if we have a director that doesn't necessarily believe in that intergenerational concept, then the parents aren't feeling as confident as they may, because sometimes maybe the parent has had a bad experience with maybe their grandparents who had dementia or a stroke survivor or people who have Parkinson's. You know, maybe it just wasn't the best experience, but for them to really see it and see it in action, I mean, they can definitely see the benefits. And it's actually a huge selling point now for both programs. We have a wait list right now in both of our programs because they just love what we do, bringing the intergenerations, the different generations together. A wish list item that we wish we would have is just a dedicated staff to run the whole intergenerational program. That's another thing that we're always constantly struggling with because we don't have the funds in either our child care center or the adult day program to be able to spare to have just one dedicated staff to run the intergenerational program. So luckily we have an amazing life enrichment specialist, which is our activity person at Lucy Ann's Place, the older adult program. And she is amazing and creates all sorts of wonderful programs, but she goes and works with the teachers over at Wurtzy's, our childcare center, to figure out, you know, what they want to do, what lessons that they're working on, and then they kind of work together and work out the calendar, which is great. So in my last few minutes, I really wanted to talk about pre-COVID and now with COVID. So pre-COVID, you know, our lives were all so different. Our intergenerational program, they would meet 2 to 3 times a day. They would have lunch together after nap time. You know, they would maybe make some snacks together. They did a lot of cooking. They did all sorts of things. And then remember March 2020. So luckily, as an agency, we kept our childcare center open the whole time. We have not closed down from COVID because we had first responders. We had medical staff. I mean, people really needed our services. But for our life enrichment program, we had a lot of people really getting nervous. A lot of our staff and a lot of our members are coming. So we decided to close mid-March. And then we opened up mid-September, and it was dramatic to see the decline in a lot of our members, but we knew we still had to keep everyone safe. And so what they're doing now, as you can see one of the pictures here, is that we try to do whatever we can outdoors. And so we go on walks with them outdoors. And then in our intergenerational garden, we have kind of a shared fence. So the children will come out in the intergenerational garden, and then the older adults will go out in their back patio area so they can see each other between the fence, and they sing songs together and they say hello. And then in the intergenerational garden, they actually open the door so the older adults are inside in our intergenerational space, and the children are just right outside, and they do a show and share right at the door, which is great. So they get to see each other. And actually the other day they had to cancel it because our older adult program had Elvis that was coming, and the kids were like, why can't we go see the grandmas and grandpas, and why can't? So you know, you could tell that they just totally love going to see the grandmas and grandpas. But then we've been doing a lot of things virtually too. So we do virtual stories that we read them. We connect the classrooms with cameras with each other so they can say hi to each other. So we're trying to do everything that we can to help them. Now, one issue that we've come across, and I'm sure a lot of people are coming across this now, is the staffing, right? Because we're all searching for the staff and we're not sure what happened to all the staff. And so on top of that, some of the regulations that have just come down recently for our childcare facility is that the staff that we hire have to have a fingerprint card in hand ready to go. And before, they had to have just the application done and an affidavit done for the fingerprint clearance. But now we're in this staffing crisis, and now we have to find staff who actually have a level 1 fingerprint clearance card with us. So there's a lot of red tape that we've been trying to work through as an agency to find staff to be able to help our kids out and our grandmas and grandpas out. So if I can just say one thing, it is such a joy to have this intergenerational program, especially on the older adult side, people who have dementia, because it's their short-term memory. But if we can create that impactful moment for them, they may not remember what they had for lunch, but they remember seeing the children. So I encourage you all to create a site. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. That was really very helpful, very inspirational. I can hardly wait till I get to come back and visit again and see everything and how it's grown. It's tremendous. I did want to mention, I just kind of scanned the chat just briefly. And in addition to colleagues around the country from various states and tribes, I'm really delighted to see that our good colleagues have joined us from Japan, Scotland, Spain, other countries in the UK and Germany. I know it's very different hours for you folks, so it's an extra effort, and we just really appreciate you being connected and having the global aspect of this work. So thanks to everyone for joining today. The pandemic has shined an even brighter light on the epidemic of loneliness and social isolation that disproportionately impacts our young and old. These are also the two populations most likely to experience ageism, stereotyped as being too young to add value or too old to contribute to their society. It doesn't have to be that way. Using an age-integrated rather than age-segregated approach, intergenerational shared sites are designed to strengthen the web of support, understanding, and connection that is so integral to us all. Shared sites include a variety of models that are more than physical places. They're shared spaces that have collective meaning for participants of different ages, including children, teens, and young adults. They can also increase community engagement and visibility. And one thought I had about that was a visit I had to Jenks, Oklahoma, to a site there that features a pre-K, a kindergarten, and then elder care. And in talking with the staff, the programs are woven into the community. And when I said, well, what happens if you were to shut down? They said there'd be an uproar. The community would never stand for it. There was that connection and passion in the community for the work that they were doing. In addition, intergenerational shared sites have been shown to save dollars while making sense. And in critical areas like staff retention and job satisfaction, shared sites soar above other facilities. There have been several sites that have shared with us that their staff retention is actually the flip of the norm in the industry. A site in South Dakota told us once that they had an 80% staff retention rate as opposed to 20%, which was the industry norm there. So that really does help with staff retention, job satisfaction. During the pandemic, as Joanne indicated, they even provided a lifeline during a time when facilities for older adults and those providing childcare struggled with staff shortages. Essential workers had a trusted location where they could take their loved ones. But it's not just that. People want these kind of facilities. They want these kind of sites. We found in a public opinion poll conducted with the Eisner Foundation a couple of years ago that 4 out of 5 Americans said that places and spaces that serve and engage younger and older people are the type of care facility they want for their loved ones and themselves. Yet, as our speakers today can attest to, and you've already heard, the process to create individual shared sites is needlessly complicated by barriers such as age-segregated funding streams. You can only serve older adults, you can only serve children, you can't serve both, by the amount of square footage it takes or that's required by licensing requirements, by zoning, by regulatory requirements, because really our facilities, our policies, and our funding's been designed to only serve single ages, and we need to change that. The Older Americans Act is a great place to begin. However, the elements in that act have yet to be funded. The good news is that in that act, which was reauthorized last year, it prioritizes programs that serve young and old and encourages intergenerational shared sites, such as co-located childcare and long-term care facilities. Currently, Congress is considering funding these programs, as well as other major investments in infrastructure, such as those in childcare, pre-K, senior center modernization, that present really good opportunities to increase shared sites across the country. You can help make sure investments in intergenerational solutions are not left out by studying our Older Americans Act fact sheet and contacting your elected officials to tell them that you want them to support intergenerational provisions in the package. You want them to support programs that connect generations rather than separate them. And don't just stop with the Older Americans Act. Review our federal funding fact sheet. Think about possibilities. That's what intergenerational work is all about, is what are the possibilities to see what the potential could be, not how things are currently. So think about the possibilities that could happen in educational settings, in housing, food and nutrition programs, and workforce, as well as state and local funding opportunities, because it's not just at the federal level. Together, we can make intergenerational shared sites the norm, not the anomaly. And I'm really delighted now to introduce Chelsea Mason. Chelsea is the Director of External Relations at the Eisner Foundation. She's a valued partner, as are all of our colleagues at the foundation, that they are a unique foundation that identify, advocate for, and invest in high quality and innovative intergenerational programs. I want to give an extra special thanks to Chelsea today because she's pitch hitting for Trent Stamp, the Executive Director of the Foundation, who's doing his civic duty today and serving on jury duty. So Chelsea, thank you for stepping in.
Of course, Donna, thank you. The Eisner Foundation has been proud of our partnership with Generations United for many years, and I'd just like to congratulate you and your team for making this event and the fantastic new toolkit on intergenerational shared spaces possible. And for anyone who hasn't checked it out yet, it's at sharingourspace.org, and it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of work that will empower you and your team to create an intergenerational shared site. The Eisner Foundation is the only US-based funder investing solely in intergenerational solutions, and intergenerational shared sites are an increasingly important part of that mission. And as you've heard already, these sites efficiently serve multiple populations at once as they serve each other. Now, I've been privileged to witness intergenerational connections at these sites firsthand. At One Generation here in Southern California, I've watched the older adults of the Senior Day Center take an active role in caring for the babies and the toddlers at the adjacent daycare. And at Bridge Meadows in Portland, I've seen young foster kids thrive in a residential community where they boast about having dozens of surrogate grandparents living around them. These sites can be life-changing, and I'm proud that with the work of Generations United and this new toolkit, we can create more of them. So as we as a society continue thinking about our path forward, it's just crucial that intergenerational shared sites be a central part of this future. And I urge practitioners to consider how to integrate intergenerational programming into your work. I urge my colleagues in philanthropy to explore what could be possible if we break out of age-restricted grant-making silos. And I urge our elected officials and policymakers to be a partner to us, to work to reduce this regulatory red tape that so often hinders the development of new intergenerational shared sites. We all have a part to play in making our communities stronger through intergenerational connections, and together we can create a better society for us all and for generations to come. Thank you. Back to you, Donna.
Thank you, Chelsea. And I must say, we are just honored to work with you folks. And I so value the bold step the Eisner Foundation took when you decided to fund only intergenerational solutions. I think you've led the way for other foundations and continue to do that. Plus, you seed extraordinary programming in LA County, which has, I think, become an incubator and a hub for high quality intergenerational practices. So thank you. Next, I'm really delighted to introduce Miriam Calderon. Miriam, actually, our paths have crossed over the years. She's been a long time advocate, ardent supporter of investments in children and understanding the value of older adults and the investments that they make in children. So Miriam currently serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy and Early Learning in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. She has for many years understood the importance of connecting our bookend generations. So Miriam, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. I am just so glad and grateful to be included, to have the opportunity to listen and learn from all of these fabulous speakers, and to catch up with you. It's been 15 years, and Donna, I would just say your vision for this work continues to be so inspiring, and I'm so happy again to be reconnected at what I think is an incredible moment. I'm honored to be serving in the Biden-Harris administration, and to be a part of the effort to build an equitable recovery from this pandemic. And as our president says, emerge even stronger by building back better. We have a president that has put the caregiving responsibilities of families front and center. And he is recognizing that those who work in this field, providing childcare and care to elders in particular, deserve fair wages, benefits, and working conditions. He talks about the caregiving responsibilities of families and supporting that, the conditions and wages of those who provide elder care and care to our youngest children as critical work and part of our essential infrastructure. So this is truly a moment I think about, Donna. When we first met 15 years ago, I don't know that we could have even imagined. So I guess there are a few things I want for you to take away, I think, about what this moment represents for those of you who are doing this work and lifting up this work and advocating for this intergenerational work in your communities. One is that this is a huge moment for early care and education. The investments that the president has proposed are unprecedented. I don't think we've ever been at the precipice, maybe 50 years ago, probably not ever, of finally being able to finance and fund high quality early care and education for children and families in our country. The president has proposed $450 billion in investments over 10 years to support families' access to affordable, high quality childcare and universal preschool. So we know that for many of you that have been working to do this work, to think about how to build these programs to support the caregiving needs of families, to connect these two generation programs, the lack of investments and resources in the early care and education sector has been a huge hindrance. I mean, even as we've heard about, some of the models that exist that assumes that there are resources to be able to finance these programs, and they are very finite and limited in terms of public funding. So that is the opportunity to change. Imagine a world in which more families can qualify and access high quality early care and education opportunities, childcare and preschool, because the resources are available to help subsidize those costs. Imagine a world in your communities where there are resources to be able to build more childcare facilities, make those investments, pay staff fair wages, subsidize those costs for families, and ensure high quality, and what could be possible with being able to advance this intergenerational work. I also want to mention that when the president talks about preschool and childcare opportunities, and our administration and our secretary are very clear that these will be mixed delivered in mixed delivery settings and environments. So this is an opportunity to partner with public schools, to partner with community-based organizations, to partner with childcare centers and home-based providers to really be able to expand this vision of early care and education. So I think that opens up a range of possibilities as we think about being able to connect programming and build shared sites. I know our next speaker will talk more. This is a proposal that is now making its way through Congress. So I'll stop there and won't get into a lot of specifics about the early care and education investments. But the second thing that I did want to mention is for us to be able to think about the needs of our workforce together. So Joanne talked about in particular the staffing shortages and challenges right now. We have, when we think about those who are caring for elders and those who are caring for young children, we know that this has been a workforce that has been plagued by low respect, low wages, of which there is high turnover. It's a workforce predominantly of women, women of color, immigrant women. We in this vision that the president has put forward of Build Back Better have an opportunity to look at fair wages, living wages for this workforce, investments that will maintain the diversity of the workforce, recognizing and respecting this workforce as essential. So how can we really think about the strategies now in response to the shortages, but into the future as we build back better to really be able to lift up this caregiving workforce. The third thing I wanted to say is that we need your voices right now. The president has put an intergenerational approach on the table and called for these historic investments. So this isn't the moment to say it's one or the other. How do we, from where you sit and who you work with, really call for both? Because I think that is the moment here. And as this proposal makes its way through Congress, we need strong voices really lifting up both ends of the continuum, as Donna said. Finally, I just want to share personally today that I am caring for my abuelita. I'm going to try to not get emotional, but we had a COVID situation in our family, and the most important, the safest place for her to be right now was for me to be caring for her. I just want you to know that I have a very personal connection, both because I care for my grandmother, but because my grandmother raised me, and she also helped raise my children. So we benefit, and I benefit every day, both from what my grandmother continues to contribute to the quality of my life, and of my children, and also want you to know that this is real and impacts all of us from wherever we sit. The needs of having the kinds of services and supports for families caring for elders and caring for young children. So, Donna, thank you. I look forward to continuing to be a partner and for just really appreciate all of the work that you're doing and your partners are doing and raising these important issues.
Miriam, thank you so much. I'm sure your abuela is very proud of you and everything that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also really appreciate what you talked about in terms of the fact that this is a moment. And I think it's up to all of us to make sure that this isn't just a moment, but it's a movement, that we really do make a difference. This is such a unique opportunity that we have where there's actually discussion about making sure that we fund intergenerational programs. So I just want to reiterate, and I will continue to do this, to beat the drum that says it's really up to all of you who are with us today to understand and make your voices heard. Your voices matter. You vote. Well, Maybe not all of our international friends are voting in this country, but the majority of the people on here do. And even our international colleagues, they have such an important voice in the policymakers and the leaders in their countries. So your voice matters. Be sure to contact your members of Congress. This is the time to do that. And we'll be sharing more information about that. But I wanted to introduce our last speaker because I'm just absolutely delighted to welcome Carla Moore. She is the co-chief executive officer for United Methodist Community House in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is an incredible facility and program that's working on an exciting expansion that we're looking forward to learning more about, but also because we just recently connected, and we are so glad that Carla and her team are part of the work going forward. So Carla, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna, and to the entire Generations United team for helping us prepare for this. You'll see that the introduction says Campus 2023. We are currently a facility that is intergenerational. We were established in 1902, so we're almost 120 years old, which means we've been around for quite some time. So our focus is we have a history of innovation and answering community needs. And so we've been the first at the table in our community. One was in 1937. We opened Grand Rapids' first nursery school. In 1972, we began participating in offering congregate meals and a day center. However, when I say day center, I am referring to independent, active older adults. We also were the first urban child development center to become NACE accredited. So we've been an intergenerational site since approximately the 70s. Our current snapshot of programs, we are still committed to child development services, youth programs, which we collaborate with the Grand Rapids Public Schools for, and continuing to offer older adult services and programs. The current look at our intergenerational programs, really I break down into two different categories. One I call internal, and those are those activities that we really kind of initiate internally. So like I said, we are a shared facility. So our Child Development Center and our Older Adults Activity Center is in the same building. And so we participate in coordinated food and art and performance activities. We do hold annual events that's designed to bring both demographics together. And then we do offer a grandparents raising grandchildren support group. The other component of that is the collaborative features, which we engage with other community partners who offer programs such as foster grandparents, where we place older adults in the classroom as additional support. We have senior companions who also assist in the Older Adults Activity Center. And then of course, AARP's workforce can be found in all of our departments in a number of ways. One of the things that we were asked to answer is what has made our organization engage in or think of or prioritize intergenerational programs. Well, for us, it was necessity and it was also natural. So we are a naturally occurring intergenerational site. We were suffering from a broken model of nonprofit that left us begging all of our needs and wants. And so as we began to assemble and devise what our strategies were going to be, we have a strict discipline that we really stick to documented needs. And then we take those programs and those ideas and we filter them through that mission matrix, making sure that we are engaging in programming that is A, meeting our mission, but also can either A, break even, or B, generate a profit. So for us, it was intentional to add an intergenerational lens to building a new model. So for those of you who are in nonprofit and you engage in development, you understand the big, hairy, audacious goal. And for us, our new strategy is just that. We are building 9 new infant toddler classrooms. Our need is 2,400 children aged 0 to 2 reside in our service area. However, there's only 189 licensed registered slots of care that exist. We are going to build a major activity center for older adults, which is something that our community is lacking. And then we are additionally engaging in the building of 92 units of affordable housing for independent older adults. The last thing that we are doing is we are exploring the development of an intergenerational research institute with a local university. We understand that we appreciate data, and we're certain that others would, and we are working to document our process so that we can share and then hopefully in the future continue to provide data for others and for ourselves. Why? What are some of the challenges with policy or funding? We're a congregate dining site. Trying to bring those two demographics together in a shared dining site is a little challenging. There's different regulations for the two different demographics, and there's limited flexibility with those policies. Another challenge that we've run across is changing demographics. So for example, our grandparents raising grandchildren service delivery components don't allow for engagement of grandparents who are younger than 60. So we are looking at advocating for some service delivery description modifications so that we can have more of a strengths-based approach and engage younger grandparents, utilizing the wisdom and expertise of older grandparents who are all in the same situation. And in our area, the public schools, because the Grandparents Raising Grandchildren program was not established in a way like it is in other communities, the Grand Rapids Public Schools naturally stepped up to solve some of the issues that they have. And so what we've been doing is been engaging with them for those to be able to engage with that population. There are limited resources and funding interest. There's not a lot of interest in funding older adult programs. Intergenerational is kind of somewhat a new concept, even though it's been around for ages. And, you know, UMCH would be able to run faster and farther down the road if we had access to more funding. And those one-time infusions of capital are really what's going to get us to that next step. We are committed to being intergenerational because that's who we are just by nature. And as we build, we will expand into more of a campus model. And so we're excited for this journey that we're on, and we're excited to share it with those who are interested. Thank you.
Carla, thank you very much. And for those who are interested in learning more about the programs that we featured today, this is their websites, so please do be sure to check them out because they're marvelous. But I also wanted to mention somebody trying to follow a little bit in the chat, and somebody said, we have such a great opportunity. What are the best strategies? And one of the best strategies I would recommend is if you're connected with a shared site or you know of a shared site, invite your member to visit. Do a site visit because members spend a lot of time in their home districts, and that's when you can really help to influence them by impressing them with the value when you see it in action. I also wanted to give one last pitch to the new toolkit because the reviews have been fabulous. I want to call out our senior fellow, Nancy Henkin, who led the development of the toolkit, but to all of you, many who are on this webinar today, who spent time reviewing, adding comments, making sure that we had such a rich resource to be able to share, to encourage the growth in intergenerational shared sites. Sharing our spaces details every step of development and operation process, from initial planning to sustaining long-term programs. So I encourage you to look at it. But as I said earlier, and I've tried to reiterate all throughout our webinar today, is let's not squander this opportunity to create and improve our country through intergenerational shared sites. As Congress considers unprecedented investments in infrastructure, urge your members of Congress to support investments in intergenerational opportunities. Now is the time, though, to also contact your local decision makers who are already thinking about how to use expected federal infrastructure investments. Reach out to your state and local policymakers and urge them to think outside of the box using an intergenerational solutions lens. We must invest in a better way to care for our younger and older generations. By looking at the whole and not just the parts, we can create healthier environments for all to thrive. As Arthur Ashe said, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can, because we can all do something. I can hardly wait till one of the things we get to do is get back together in person, because right now I would be saying, join me in saying cheers and applaud and thank you to these wonderful panelists and speakers. I know many of you have been doing that in the chat box, and we appreciate it. But thank you for everything you do each day and what you're going to continue to do.